On the first day we became roommates. Soog asked me what my name was. I'm Shu Yi. He murmured it under his breath. Shu Yi. May I have my beloved? That's such a beautiful name. But then he said it was rude to call me by my full name, and insisted on calling me baby, a nickname even my mom never used. That day, Sooj wanted curry. I complained it took too long to cook, but he shook my hand pleading, baby, I'll help you. And then, with a single potato, he spent a full 2 hours preparing it. Every piece was cut into perfect cubes, all the same size, neat and orderly. I smiled bitterly. They'll just lose their shape once you throw them in the soup. But we know, he said, eating pretty things makes your mood better. When the soup boiled, I imitated my mom and dipped my pinky to taste the saltiness. Before it reached my lips, Soog leaned over and gently sucked on my little finger, savoring it. Just right. My brain froze for a moment. Everything Sooj did and said was filled with the innocence and openness of a child, with no hint of pretense. Plus that unbelievably handsome, almost artistic face. No matter how strange he was, it was impossible to be angry at him. That day, I took Sooj to the company for his regular checkup. The readings showed his temperature was rising. He would enter the vulnerable period in a couple of days. When Zhou Hezai heard my report, a flicker of something unidentifiable excitement or nervousness crossed his face. At that moment, a commotion came from outside the office. Zhou and I rushed over to see a new alpha from IT pinned on Sooj. His pupils were dilated, eyes bloodshot. On the brink of madness, Zhou tackled the IT guy from behind and restrained him. Fortunately, Soog only had a small scrape on his arm and was otherwise fine. The IT guy, recovering, lowered his head in shame and whispered, "Sorry." Zhou explained, "He's new and hasn't received his antibodies yet. Lost control." Sooj walked over and comforted him softly. "It's not your fault. Instincts aren't something we can control. As for whether the antibodies work, we don't know yet." Sooj looked up and teased Zhou, "Right, Boss Zhou?" A few days later, the test was what I'd call a one-sided domination. I'd never seen Soog like this, his expression clear and innocent like a baby, but his eyes full of desire. He walked toward Zhou leisurely, confident and proud. Suga's fingertip traced a circle on Zhou's chest, then leaned in to whisper by his ear, "Come on." Zhou's hands pressed into the bed, knuckles white. Sooj closed his eyes and held his breath, releasing all his pheromones. The intense passion was like wildfire, instantly raising the entire observation room's temperature. Sensors went wild, showing Zhou's heart rate speeding up, body temperature rising, pupils dilating twice their size, and a combined sensory index soaring to 6.5 when the threshold was 5. I stood and signaled to stop. Zhou wasn't willing to give up, trying to resist with sheer willpower, shouting and pinning Sooj hard onto the ground. His face twisted, eyes red like bleeding, as if he wanted to tear Sooj apart. I rushed in and stood between them. When Zhou saw me, he suddenly snapped out of it. He froze, then his expression contorted as if unable to accept reality, and he fled in panic. I wanted to chase after him, but was held back by Soog. He was hot like fire, soft like water, his hand caressing my face, his voice low and hoarse. "Sis, don't leave me." The peak of pheromones is when an omega is most alluring and vulnerable. I had no choice but to soothe him first. Sooj slipped into my arms, resting his head on my shoulder, clinging and whispering, "Sis, you're so good." I nodded, then drew the syringe and injected the suppressant into his neck. Zhou crying was the last thing I expected. He had been hiding alone in a corner, holding back his tears. I said a little too much. "If you want to cry, just cry." How could I cry? It's just a failed experiment. This wasn't the first time. But as I spoke, Zhou suddenly seemed overwhelmed with grief, his voice trembling until he couldn't hold it back anymore. This is what they call a tough guy breaking down in tears. I broke out in sweat and hurried to comfort him. "It's okay. We'll keep developing and upgrading, we'll find a way." Zhou sobbed with frustration. "But there were so many people just now. And he actually, I know. It's his fault, so rude. We won't let him come again." "No." Zhou's eyes hardened with resolve, starting his lifelong stubbornness again. But his voice still trembled. "I won't give up. I will definitely defeat him." "Boo-hoo!"